Okay, we're in volume 8. See, volume 8. And we are at part 1, story 10, Hungry People Fed. Okay. One morning, Ben had been down to the lake with his fishing pole and caught 2 fish. Look, Mother, he cried as he rushed into the kitchen. See what I caught? Mother looked and smiled. You are They're not very big, are they? She said. What are you going to do with them? I'll have them for lunch, if you will cook them for me. Lunch? What are you planning to do today? Oh, I'm going to listen to Jesus again. He's wonderful. You should go and hear him too. Could you could I have 3 or 4 of those little barley loaves, Mother? All right, dear, take 5. You'll be hungry before the day is over. Oh, oh, thank you, Mother, cried Ben, and in a little while he was on his way. There was no trouble finding Jesus. Everybody seemed to know where he was. On the main road across the fields, among the mountain trails, hundreds of excited people in small and large groups were going in the same direction. By and by the crowd got more and more dense. Ben had never seen so many people before. He pressed through, squeezing this way and that so that he could get in front and be near the great teacher. Soon Jesus began to talk, and he said such beautiful things in such a kind and gentle way that the people loved every word. He spoke so clearly that even those furthest away could hear what he said. Hour after hour slipped by, and still he talked, and still the people listened. They were so interested that they all about eating. Ben had forgot to eat his lunch. By and by the sun began to sink, and the chilly breeze blew up from the lake. Don't you think it's time to send the people home? One of the disciples said to Jesus. At least let them go and buy food in the villages around, said another. They hadn't eaten all day. They don't need to go, said Jesus. You feed them. The disciples were shocked. We don't have any food, they said. 200 pennyworth 200 pennyworth would not be enough to feed this crowd. In other words, a lot of money, said Philip. Even if someone had only a little. Ben heard them talking and wondered what it was all about. Jesus could be could It could be that Jesus was hungry, and no wonder, after talking all day. Then he thought about his lunch. If the master's hungry, he said to Andrew, who was standing by him, he may have my lunch. Andrew smiled and spoke to Jesus. There's a lad here, he said, who has 5 barley loaves and 2 small fishes. But what are they among but what are they among so many? Tell everybody to sit down, said Jesus. And they did. Sit down, everybody, the disciples shouted, moving out among the crowd. Why, what's the matter? The people asked. We're going to eat. Eat? Why? Where's the food? Never mind, you'll see. And how and now Ben was handing his lunch to Jesus. And Jesus smiled at him and saying, "Thank you, Ben. Thank you very much." That sweet smile was worth everything to Ben. It it more than made up for going without his lunch. And then it has a picture of him breaking up the fish and the barley, the 5 loaves. 5 loaves and 2 fishes. And of course, the main character in the middle is the representation of Jesus. And he's feeding 5,000. I remember this story. Because a lot of us that go through Bible school remember these stories. Okay? But he didn't lose his lunch. After all, soon something very wonderful began to happen. First, Jesus blessed the bread and the 2 fishes. Then he began to break them into pieces and gave them to his disciples. And the strange thing was, no matter how much he had broken off, there was always more left. Pretty soon all the disciples were carrying food to the people as fast as they could, walking up and down that mountainside. Time and time and again, they came back for more, and there was always more bread and more fish waiting for them, as it fell from the master's hand. Ben looked on amazed. He couldn't understand it, and I wouldn't be surprised if, even now and then, Jesus turned and gave him some food just for himself. Okay, turned and gave him some food just for himself. Never had he had so much to eat. He had far, far more than he would had have had he eaten his lunch all by himself. So it has 2 heads in there. Oh, it's just the thing they do. Okay, the Bible says that 5,000 men were fed that afternoon, besides women and children, and everybody had all he could eat. In fact, when it was all over, Jesus said to his disciples, "Gather up the fragments that remain, that nothing be lost." 12 baskets were filled. So greatly had everybody been blessed. But there is something else very special about this story. It is found in chapter 6, verse 6, where we are told that Jesus, knowing what he would do, this meant that right from the start, when the people began to get hungry and the disciples started to worry about how much food was cost, Jesus had everything planned. He knew about Ben. He knew about Ben's lunch. He knew what he would do with it if Ben would give it to him. He had watched Ben all day. He had seen how interested he was. He knew Ben wanted to do something for him, and so he planned the whole marvelous miracle with this little boy in mind. Today he has his eyes on you. Perhaps you can tell he is planning to do something great and wonderful with you. He knows what he would do if you would let him. If you would place would place your best, your dearest treasure in his hands. And then it has the it's a Herbert Rudin, and it is them gathering up the 12 baskets of food, of extra food. And if you think about it, there's no possibly way that 2 fish and 5 barleys could feed 5,000 plus, or at least 10,000 people. But this is the illustration down at the bottom. And that was the end of part 1, story 10. So we're going to stop, and then, like always, we're going to stop, and then we'll be back with our next story in just a bit.